Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth Digital Transformation and Government Conference. My name is Bob Weisman. I'm the host, and I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Dr. Raul Abril from the European Commission, and he's going to be talking about Interoperable Europe Act, which is just hot off the press, if I'm not mistaken there, Raul. Okay, I think that's just brand new. He's going to be talking about the Interoperable Europe Act, integrating digital services and architectural perspective. And the whole idea is that what they're trying to do is allow European nations to be interoperable in accordance with the interoperability framework that was put out, and that was presented actually last year at the conference. Dr. Abril is a research fellow at KU Leuven Public Governance Institute and an officer of the European Commission. He's responsible for a portfolio of interoperability programs in the European Commission, including the European Interoperability Reference Architecture, the eGovERA suite of tools supporting public administration, digital business capability building, portfolio management, and digital transformation, and the Interoperability Assessment suite of tools, some of which might be of interest to student audience members. Raul has more than 35 years of ICT experience, professional services, most of them in the private sector, and holding several senior positions, including R&D portfolio manager in a major USA IT retailer. He's the chief architect for the European Interoperability Reference Architecture and the e-government enterprise reference architecture in the European Commission. His knowledge domains cover research methods, advanced analytics, R&D, knowledge management, and domains such as decision support and business intelligence, data warehousing, and so on. Raul has been professor at several universities and been actively publishing his research. He holds a doctoral degree, a European PhD certification, as well, from the European Doctoral School on Knowledge Management, which is in Denmark, and other degrees from Spain. And he also has a Master in Project Management that he acquired through the George Washington University in the United States. So without further ado, I turn you into the capable hands of Dr. Abril. Over to you, Raul.
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure to be with you. And also thank you very much for inviting me. I welcome everybody. On behalf of the European Commission, I am an officer of the European Commission, and I just wanted to give a very short introduction of this institution. In the European Union, we have democratic institutions, and then what would be the equivalent to the federal government in one centralized state, or it could be the executive, using another terminology, is what we call European Commission. In addition, of course, we have the Parliament, the European Parliament, and we have also the Council. The Council is basically the profile of the Senate, for example, could be in US. So it's the high chamber. And one responsibility that the European Commission has, according to the treaties that govern our action, is the initiative in creating law. Okay, and this is precisely what we are going to talk in my function as an officer for the last 10 years. As Bob has shared with you, colleagues, I have been most of my life in the private industry, but I am an officer for the last 10 years. And then in this capacity, I have basically the part-time responsibility to produce legal text. And this proposal that I am going to share with you all, the highlights, is I have been a contributor. So I am, as we call in Europe, one of those plumbers that are in the backstage producing legal text. Okay, so another aspect that I would like to set up the scene is notice the term proposal. By that, it means that it's still in the make. So the Interoperable Europe Act is still a proposal. It means it was adopted by my institution, which is the Commission, which again is the executive. And now we are in the dialogue and negotiations with the Council, which is the Senate, and also with the Parliament representatives. And then after all these things, it will be a vote in the Parliament, and then hopefully this will be adopted. When this could be done, we expect that by the end of this year. So it means that, Bob, for the next conference, we will have an Interoperable Europe Act approved, and not a proposal, okay? The other aspect that I wanted to comment is that we have different categories, if you allow me, of legal tests, of legislative tests, so that they need to go to the Parliament, but with different binding powers. And then the top one is what we call regulation. The second level is directives, and the third one are decisions. And this, what we are talking here, is for a regulation, which is the strongest one in terms of binding powers. And when these type of regulations are approved, they become mandatory for all the member states in the Union. This is one aspect to be considered. The other aspect to be considered is that the European Union, and just now I'm going to put a reference, Canada, basically the member states, they have way more autonomy than the provinces and the provincial governments in Canada. So in fact, this means that to have a regulation is quite an achievement and a challenge, because it requires a lot of conversations, as I said, in the Council, and is in the Council with the member states. We are talking about Germany, we are talking about France, etc., etc. They have their position, and this is where there are their conversations. Okay, so I am going to go to the, after this introduction, which I think is relevant, I'm going to the first slide, and then this is here is just bringing also for your attention what is happening today on interoperability in the European Union. Well, the first thing is that we have maybe you are aware of, the European Interoperability Framework, which was a communication, not even one of the three binding legal tests. So a communication has no binding whatsoever powers. And this is where in the European Interoperability Framework, as a communication, there are the 12 suggested principles, is the highest possible level of, if I may, requirements using Archimate ontology. You know, there are principles there. And then this is also what we use in the European Interoperability Framework. So those are the 12 principles, like transparency, etc., openness. And then those 12 principles supporting interoperability are non-binding. So this is this current situation, and the last version of that was in 2017. Then we are, for many years, way before my join to the European Commission as an officer since '95, there are activities and efforts of the European Commission supporting interoperability. So, for example, we have a collaborative platform, which is Join Up, where we publish everything and everybody publishes everything in relation to interoperability. And then we had also a mechanism to basically exchange opinions, views across member states and the European Commission, and was an informal, please pay attention to the qualification, informal CIO network, okay, and also an expert group. So this is the situation. And then this type of situation was clearly not sufficient for the needs of promoting interoperability. In addition to that, there are some manifestations about the lack or challenges to interoperability, mainly related to big digital public services. Okay, and here in these slides there are some cases with a bad in the first and in the second. You can read that. You don't need me to present that, but in essence, cross-border interoperability is a challenge. And when I say cross-border, to be fair, yes, I am mainly thinking in the borders between the member states, so between Spain and France, between France and Belgium, etc. But also there are some logical cross borders inside the member states. So, for example, in Germany, which is a federal state, we could consider also challenges between the landers, which are the equivalent to the provinces in Canada. So cross-border, either physical or logical virtual border is a challenge in the European Union. And then finally, there is a subtle difference in the third case. And in the third case, we are talking about basically reusability. Basically, I would say that it's not an exaggeration to say that we are reinventing too many times same solution building blocks. As you notice in the subtitle of my presentation is an architecture perspective. So you may expect that I use from time to time architecture terms. Myself, as Bob has introduced, myself, I am the chief architect in the European Commission about interoperability. So reusability is a problem, of course. Imagine reusability not only inside a member state but across border. This is really a challenge. So let's define the problem. What could be a fair statement about the problem? Well, here you have a suggested narrative, and is that we have limited interoperability of basically digital public services and data in public administrations in Europe. And by that, this is regardless the tier of the public administration. It doesn't matter that we are talking about the central top level public administration or regional public administration or a municipality or any other different intermediate layers, tiers. So there are three, I would say, factors that are, according to our studies and understanding, that are basically promoting this situation. The first one, and not in order of relevance, please don't get this order as importance. All of them are important, is an inefficient governance of interoperability efforts. Okay, so we are clear about that. Governance, or I would say, to be proper in terms of the terminology, digital governance is basically something that requires improvement and important improvement. So digital governance in the European Union, as it concerns to interoperability, we should do better to progress. The second one is that we need the basic components. For example, we need an agreement of commonality on the specifications, on the standards and specifications, and yes, also the solutions. And when they're talking about solutions, I am talking of not only solution building blocks, I am talking and including also infrastructure aspects. Okay. Then there is also a last, I would say, to make that simple, a last comment, which is the approach for designing and implementing digital public services across the European Union. I want you to know that when you talk about Europe, to me is a synonymous of the European Union. Okay, and so to avoid confusion. So I would. It's fair to say that there is not a well thought approach of interoperability by default in when designing and implementing digital public services. What we need to understand is that what is basically a legislation package. What do we consider? Well, basically a legislation or why a legislative package? Why you should those that are advocates of minimal legislation definitely will be a criticism about that. Why you need to put a legislation package? Well, basically, what you have in the picture here is some representation of the current situation in the European Union. We have a Data Governance Act and an Open Data Directive. Open Data Directive in terms of which means directive, not regulation, which means has to be transposed by each member states in the European Union, because we want to be open. So open data is a pillar. So again, this was this piece of to create, to harmonize between the member states. Then the Data Governance Act, which is a regulation from the top, from the European Commission. The same, we have internally an European strategy for data. There are some significant aspects in digitalization, like in justice. And then you may know that we have a pioneering in the world, the regulation on digital identity. However, all of those, they need to be interconnected, and then a first reason justifying why an Interoperable Europe Act is needed is basically to be the glue between all those pieces. Okay. Now, I wanted you to know, to make that simple, that we have style guidelines to produce any type of regulation, and we need to always to consider at least 4 options: the status quo, which means not moving a finger, and then incrementally different options, and then the last one, which was option, and up to 4, typically not more than 4. And then the options that we were adopted was the last one. The option 3 in the European Commission was, let's create a new legal text introducing in the text a minimum set of interoperability requirements for public administration. So this was the approach, and this is the approach that you can access to the text and the narrative of the text of the Interoperable Europe Act. Now, what are the ambitions? The ambitions, by the way, these you can see here, you see my cursor in the right-hand side, I am moving it for your eyes. So this is a communication. A communication is a test promoting the Interoperable Europe Act regulation. So it's not the regulation itself, it's just a narrative explaining, and I added here the link for your potential interest. So what we wanted to present here is what are the ambitions and the main objectives. And basically, we were looking to harmony with a profound respect about the citizens and human beings, not only citizens. Be aware which is a challenge that in Europe, like in other parts in the world, like in US, there is we have a lot of users of digital public services which are not citizens. Okay, so the perspective that we adopted here was human-centric, and then basically to basically how to ensure a consistent cross the different digital public service in member states, basically support to policy making and implementation of interoperability. And then to create to cover one of the deficiencies that we have identified, which is to have a stable body for digital governance, and this is what we call as the governance structure. And finally, to create, well, I attended last year, and there was a colleague from Canada presenting a platform for sharing solution building blocks. Well, in essence, our approach is to promote ecosystems of solutions, which involve not only a platform with a shelf where you cherry picking your solution building blocks, but also an ecosystem open to, for example, economic operators or other agents in the society that are able to test, use, and promote their own solution building blocks, and in using a key component every time more popular in the European Union, which are data spaces. Okay, at the end, what the intention is to create public value to the European citizens. So the scope and the legal basis of the act, I will start by the end, which is at the bottom of the slide. The legal basis are the treaties, and specifically the treaty of the functioning of the European Union, which would be AKI, the Constitution of the European Union, together with the Treaty of Lisbon. So those are the legal basis that they authorize us to work in this sense with interoperability. And then who is addressed? Basically the public sector bodies. Notice the language, because there are also different labels to qualify those bodies, like agencies or any other members. So we wanted to have a generic category, same public sector bodies in the European Union. And then basically in terms of the scope, we wanted to have some minimum measures to promote cross-border interoperability of network and information systems, which are providing or managing digital public services. So notice, and I am moving my cursor, that the focus of the text is going to be on that. Is the unit of analysis is not one digital public service like in EIRA, for example, or in an enterprise architect, the unit architecture framework, TOGAF, whatever. The unit of analysis is one organization. So what is the unit of analysis? So far, please, I would like to stress that I still is in my proposal, so changes may happen. But so far, there is a big consensus that the unit of analysis should be infrastructure and information system, okay, which is going to intended to support, manage, or deliver digital public service. And then setting some minimal common rules and frameworks for coordination of those digital public service, and also for the development of digital public services. And then let me be sure that this is the next one. Yes, and so then the key pillars you have in the left hand side the table of contents, and the key pillars are those four that we have, that we are going to see in the next slide. So there is no point to spend some time here. So one key pillar is basically the governance, okay? And then for this one in Article 15, it is pretty much has been accepted, no big challenge. What should be a stable body called Interoperable Europe Board, okay, which should be basically the liaison between the Interoperable Europe community and then the national competent authorities. And this should be the stable um, um, organization body to manage and to supervise the initiatives. And then what are basically some of deliverables in our proposal for regulation? This is important from the architecture point of view. The first one are mandatory interoperability assessments on before entering in public funding of any basically digital public services. So believe it or not, the situation is that there was today there is no mandatory impact assessment on interoperability. So the consensus, thanks God, is that the better way to assure is a kind of quality assurance. Is not quality control. So better to do quality assurance. So if you want to promote interoperability, the best thing that you can do, that's our conclusion, is to right away before putting money, public fundings, and you need to make a mandatory interoperability assessment, okay? And basically assessing the impact on cross-border interoperability, okay? Notice that does it mean that every single digital public service in the European Union should go through this type of assessment? The answer is big no. So only those some there are, and this is one of the, I will not hide that the interoperability assessment is one of the major points of discussion and negotiations, and specifically what are the eligibility criteria to be mandatory to enter in, that triggers this thing, the mandatory interoperability assessment. Any case, in this is a big achievement, because doing this from the beginning, you are setting the path to achieve interoperability. Okay. Then another implication will be that we will need to update our existing 12 principles and the conceptual model of what a digital public service is, which is the main components, in my opinion, of the EIF. They will need to be revised for sure, those generic principles and potentially the conceptual model of a digital public service. Then we will create also, looking at the end, like a sandwich, the interoperable assessment from an architectural perspective is a digital governance decision to be done at the beginning, but then at the end is we want to create an interoperable Europe label, a kind of basically a certificate, if you allow me, that it will be basically a stamp on a digital public service that has been considered interoperable. Okay, and then we would like to have also this ecosystem of some a minimum set of solutions and specifications that should be reused. Okay, and in order to do that, we are discussing to have in this ecosystem an interoperable catalog of specification and solutions, and I would expect EIRA is basically one of those cream of the cream specs and solutions that they should be used for basically the use cases that the EIRA is intended. Okay, so those are the main things, in addition to monitoring, etc. But those are the main aspects that are
part of the scope. And then what an interoperability assessment should be? Well, basically, I can refer to the quality assurance literature saying it's a quality assurance mechanism. Okay, and then those are the basic now additional details on why we need that, but I don't think I need to spend more time here. And then basically the minimum content of an assessment. I want to confess, colleagues, that we started with some minimum content, but this is now being challenged a lot. So, for example, I will tell you that there is this is a lot of challenges in terms of, for example, APIs or types of APIs. So there is no don't take that to the literacy of the word, because basically the main concern is, are you conformance with the principles of the EIF? Do you have a statement saying that you need to be interoperable? What are the estimated costs that you may want to engage, etc. And how do you plan to follow up? So there is a minimum content of this interoperability assessment, but in any case, please remember that in a democratic environment and talking with, the member states, the things are complex and they take time. So as usual in the European Union, progress is very slow, because we need to talk to a lot of people and we need to reach a minimum consensus. Whatever the minimum consensus is, it will be way better than what we had before. No, there are some changes, some implications for the member states, which participation in co-creation, co-design in this Interoperable Europe Act, and also here you have some changes that I have already explained, so I don't need to go through those slides, those tests. And then I wanted to share with you something because Bob asked me on preparing this. He asked me to show a little bit of a case, and at the time that March, when I was preparing the slides for this excellent conference, I didn't have, but now I have. So I have even not having approved the proposal, we are working. We are working with member states as is would be approved. Okay, and what I am sharing here is a cycle of the commission, which again is the executive typical cycle on what to do in terms of a new public policy. Okay, which potentially it is materialized in a legal text. And then in this aspect, notice that there is something that is implementing in the member states. So assume that there is a directive which is the second layer of binding powers, lower than a regulation, that the Commission launches and then is approved in the Parliament, and then the member states, they need to transpose to their legal text and, for example, to create digital public services at the national level, conformance to this test. So what we have already done with taxes, for your information, we have done already with taxes and in support to small and medium enterprises in Europe, in the European Union, there was a new directive that was on taxes, and then traditionally, because many causes, but one of them, because not all the member states, they have the same skills and resources, then the different services in the European Commission encountered that the adoption was derogated. Derogated means postponed. There were consistently requests for postponing the date of entering into force of this directive because they were not ready. And then we have done a new approach, and this new approach is fully architecture based, which is one of the implications of this proposal, and is that the policy owner, for example, the tax authority in our commission, basically creates a new directive, for example, and then instead of, which they do, publishing and launching it, and then, you need to deliver, you need to do, and then with those problems, we do another step. And this other step is that we, in co-creation with the member states representatives, we do essentially using EIRA, we do a model of the requirements and a partial solution of the digital public services. And when I say a partial solution, it means the design of the partial solution and not a full, because every digital, they need to transpose this directive to their own legal framework, and then they may change and introduce subtle changes. But we are facilitating and accelerating that by providing, using EIRA, the analysis of the requirements, which is the problem definition, and the targeted solution design partially, not but a lot, with a pretty high level of comprehensiveness. And then basically we promote, we do the knowledge transfer, and then they need to implement, which means to finalize this digital public service solution design, and then to develop, either going to procurement or with their own resources. And then we come back with another tool, which is the test bed, which allows to do quality control, which means to check that what they have developed is compliance with what they have done. And I just finished. I think I managed my 35 minutes, Bob. And this is a case, a real case, that we have done with all the member states in relation to supporting implementation of a public policy. Bob?
Helps when I unmute the unmute button. There we go. Great. No, super. Well, anyways, well, thank you very much. Please, people, make use of the Q&A box. Okay, chat's not working. Is been turned off. Okay, by the tech folks. So just use the Q&A function. I've got a question for you. Are you using at all some of the work with NATO has some functionality with respect to their interoperability program and standing test beds and annual tests, so people can bring their software and just see whether it works or not interoperably? Do you have anything equivalent like that in the EU? I didn't. Yeah. I know this is sort of an architecture approach, but do you have a test bed where people can bring their products and see if they're interoperable?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have the am I sharing? Am I sharing, right? Still I am.
Yes, sharing. Yes, you're sharing, yes.
Okay, so you go to the join up. So you say join up is in Google, and then you say test bed, and then basically you will get access to, here you have interoperability test bed, and this is a service you can use with completely anonymous, and you can test. There are two use cases of the test bed, and it's very popular tool. And by the way, I am also the responsible of the test bed as the chief architect. So I am responsible for that. And then the interoperability test bed allows two use cases. One is conformance testing, typically for exchanges of messages between two whatever solutions, but also is validation. Okay, validation. For example, we use the EIRA validator is basically the test bed that validates one model that is basically conformance with respect to the previous model. So if you have a solution design model using Archimate, that this solution design is conformance with the analysis of the requirements. So the answer is big yes, but this is part of the answer. You have mentioned NATO. I want to credit you, Bob. The last time that that you invited me presential before COVID, I was attending. I was one keynote speaker. I presented presentially. It was a pleasure to be with you. And then after me, there was a colleague from NATO presenting. Okay. And then, oh my gosh, you know, those guys in the NATO organization are not in the yellow pages. So it's really difficult to manage to get in touch with them. In fact, I was for around 8 months after trying to contact the colleagues here because the headquarters are also here in Brussels. So when this colleague finishes, I got his business card, we exchanged it, and then I sent an email saying, I want to collaborate with you. I credit your organization as the worldwide benchmark in terms of standards and specifications. I want to accelerate how do we do things in the European Union with respect to standard specification. So we enter in a collaboration. I was introduced with their working group for standards and specifications, and we created another aspect, which is we created the one of the CAMSS, which is another tool that I am responsible for, which is the assessment of one standard or a specification. Okay, and then we validated that with this group. They say yes, this is the way that we work, and then with this standard and specification core vocabulary, which is accessible to you. You can use it. You can do what the same way that I did. You can here say join up, and then you can basically type again core standard and specification
I'll
core
tell you what,
vocabulary.
if you could just send me the links or just put it in chat, that would be great. And
Okay,
then we
I
can
will
share it
do.
with the rest of the folks.
So here you have the core standards and specifications vocabulary, which was validated by NATO. And then in correspondence, they say, and now we want to learn from you. We want to create the NATO interoperability reference architecture, NIRA, and we want to learn from EIRA, specifically from the legal view and the organizational view. So we did this exchange, and I have to, I am very happy to say that we accelerated with that. What I am sharing with you, colleagues, we accelerated between 3 and 4 years. Okay, and I cannot say anything if they found value. They say yes, that they found value in EIRA and inspiration for their NIRA, NATO Interoperability Reference Architecture. So this is now I have completed my answer to you, Bob.
Okay, great. I think this is interesting because it complements activities such as the National Information Exchange Model effort in the States. It's multi-jurisdictional service delivery and multi-jurisdictional communication, sharing of information, I think is probably the best way of putting it. You have to have a common standard, a lingua franca with which to share information. you can't for that. That's the core standards and specifications, and that I know in the Canadian government we use NIEM, the National Information Exchange Model, that was piloted in the United States and has a large following. And for certain non-military and justice applications, this might be rather interesting, especially for organizations such as Global Affairs Canada and the like that are dealing in an international sphere. So do we have any other questions for Dr. Abril? Going. No. Okay. Well, listen, thank you ever so much, Dr. Abril, for giving a presentation. If you could just give me some links to the e-government core vocabularies. And also, I can't stress the importance of having a test bed. This is where vendors and departments can bring their products and see whether it works in an environment. It's not in production, it's sort of in a test and integration environment, and just see whether it works. Certain organizations have a yearly test and people can take a look at the new applications. And this is good for a public-private partnership as well. When you want to align industry along with the government direction and basically take advantage of industry competencies and industry solutions to resolve your issues. Oh, wait a sec, I got a question here. Sorry.
And it's for free, yeah?
I'm sorry?
It's for
Yeah,
free.
well, the cost is right. Certain other organizations, if you ask for interoperability assessments, it costs a great deal of money. Okay, so I'm just going to, we just got a link in. So I've got a document with just a bunch of interesting links that we can share for that. And it's not just semantic interoperability, it's legal interoperability. It's also dealing with the technical interoperability.
That's correct.
And the business and operational interoperability, which is really important.
Yes.
Yeah. The loss framework is legal, operations, semantic, and technical. And
yeah,
it's really important to look at those 4 layers. Go ahead, Ralph.
We say that we are lost. L-O-S-T.
Oh, the acronym doesn't describe the effort, I can assure you.
In interoperability, we are really lost. But
Yeah.
I claim that now we know what we do not know. Okay.
Well, that says is basically we're moving up. They're moving up the ladder, but I think they've got a very good interoperability framework, and it builds on all the open standards that exist globally. So, without further ado, Raul, thank you ever so much for taking the time to present to us. I really find it interesting. I've got the presentation will be available to record, as well as the presentation will be made available to all the attendees. And let's see, now, do we have another question? No. Okay, that's good. So good. Well, anyways, take care. I'm going to stop the recording now. What I'd like to do is, from a conference point of view, we're almost at lunch. And during lunch hour, for your listening pleasure, we actually have sponsors. Now, sponsors are really important for an organization, and we're going to have booths up from both Fujitsu and the Canadian Government National Research Council. Fujitsu will basically be taking a look at the services they provide, and they do a great deal in e-government. They presented this morning on smart cities in Taipei. Don Kleise was there. But also at the same time, National Research Council is providing the research underpinning for a great many efforts within government. And you know what? They're looking for people. Okay. So if you're interested to see what they can offer you and what you can offer the government, go talk to them at noon. The button should be on your conference live page. Take a look at them. The booths will be manned as of noon today. Okay, without further ado, thank you very much. This afternoon, by the way, we're going to have 3 streams. We're going to have one stream as sort of the cyberspace, where we have zero trust architecture and analytical software for threat assessment. That's going to be given by the Center for Cybersecurity for Canada. And stream 2, we've got AI and knowledge management. And we've got Dr. Kimis Delker, who's a global expert in Jay Leibovitz actually alluded to that in one of the plenaries yesterday. And she's going to be giving 2 sessions, one knowledge management in a post-truth world, and then future trends in knowledge management. She's She's a professor over at McGill University, and she's been published by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In the third stream, we're going to have interoperability, where we're going to have the World Bank presenting on interoperabilities towards a data-driven public sector. I think that's a recurrent theme. And then we're going to have Paul Jackson from the Treasury Board and Justin Osmond from the Standards Council of Canada giving a presentation on standards for digital credentials. So I really think there's some very interesting lineups this afternoon. Please feel free to join, and I will be seeing you anon. Okay, thank you very much. Take care.